Welcome to the channel. I'm Donkey D and this is the Abandoned City. As you can see, we're gonna start today's build by adding some real graffiti stuff. I like this new pack a lot. This black and white graffiti here looks very rough, but that's exactly what makes it authentic, especially for graffiti that appears on trains. But you'll definitely need to pick the right size pieces, because painting on trains is almost impossible to make them that large. On container cars like these, covering about half the surface is already considered huge. And a top-to-bottom whole car piece is something, let's say, it's almost impossible for a single person. It's a crew job, you know. In real life, some crews are famous for their whole car paintings. Like this one-up piece, for example. They're world famous for consistently pulling off whole car pieces. Most of the time, they focus on subway cars in Europe, especially in Germany. If you live in that area, you've probably seen their work frequently, as they're known for boldly painting during regular station stops while the subway is still in operation. It is so crazy and it is so legendary. But unfortunately, we can't recreate a subway or train piece sprayed by one-up because for some reason, the decals in this pack don't work on trains. Like this one. See? Nothing shows up. And in fact, earlier graffiti packs were even more limited. You couldn't apply their pieces to containers or trains at all. Some of them could only be placed on buildings or grounds. Anyway, like people always say, you use whatever you got, and I am pretty happy that the creator included this one-up thing, or I should say one-up, the #1 illegal graffiti crew in the world. Although they don't have a YouTube channel, if you're into this kind of wild action stuff, you can easily find related videos or even movies about them. I was lucky enough to attend their movie premiere before. The interesting part was that everyone entering the venue was given a balaclava, the kind bank robbers wear. You know, considering many attendees were illegal graffiti writers or undercover law enforcement, providing everyone with a way to conceal their identity was pretty smart. And we have some of these double-deck containers, but we can't use such colorful pieces like this. You know, these kinds of pieces aren't meant for risky illegal action. They're more suited for those big and tall Hall of Fame walls, like the depot's wall just looks perfect for them. And I like this rat painting, kind of like Banksy style, which is kind of like another world #1 in the graffiti scene. Or more precisely, I should say, what he has done belongs to street art. You know, graffiti and street art can sometimes be two very different things, and people might even fight over it if you mix them up. And back to the Abandoned City story, I want to thank Nicholas Hansen for his comment, which gave me a lot of inspiration. He wrote, quote, "What if there was an artist who lived in the area and was depressed for quite a while? He probably struggled with his life and couldn't find any other purpose besides drinking. But when the accident happened, it was like a wake-up call. Instead of leaving like the government said, he took it as a sign to get his life back in shape. What if he learned of the rumors of the government and their doings? What if he began using his art skills to paint anti-government graffiti, or even designing symbols for the anti-government groups?" This story actually reminds me of something from real life. About 4 years ago, when the pandemic broke out, it seemed like the only ones celebrating were graffiti writers. With people afraid to go out and work, security levels dropped significantly in many places. Spraying trains or doing illegal city bombing suddenly became much easier than it had been before. You wouldn't believe how excited they were. Most of the graffiti writers I know don't have regular jobs, so for them, the pandemic was like a dream come true, especially in Europe. Governments were giving out money and train yards were practically deserted. There were plenty of trains, hardly any patrols. It was like the perfect setup for them. So let's put the graffiti aside for now and move on to this small area here. I'm planning to create a scene with some train freight cars that spilled their cargo everywhere. Maybe this one was loaded with construction materials, or it was in the middle of being loaded when the virus outbreak happened. The cargo could include like wooden planks, metal beams, or stone slabs. And over time, the ground would be a mess, you know. Some of the planks might be cracked or warped, scattered across the area, while the stone slabs are broken into uneven pieces, metal beams are rusted, bent, or half buried in dirt, and there are still piles of bundled beams, some that were ready to be loaded onto the train, or maybe they were freshly unloaded. A few containers are scattered around as well. As for the vehicles in the area, I'd say they were most likely abandoned after some looters drained the fuel and left them here. Weeds, of course, have started to grow everywhere, sprouting around the containers and those beams, slowly reclaiming the area. As for why the survivors didn't take all these construction materials with them, well, maybe their trucks were already full at that time, or maybe they never got the chance to come back. No one really knows. For some reason, when building roads, these random shadows might appear out of nowhere. Thankfully, this issue is super easy to fix and the solution works perfectly. All you need to do is go to the game's graphics settings and set the shadow quality to low. See? Problem solved, and you don't even need to worry about setting low shadow quality. It looks the same as high to me, just without the shadow bug. As the two trains hurtle toward each other, alarms might sound in the control room, or crew members may attempt emergency brakes. Despite these efforts, the train's massive momentum often makes a collision unavoidable, especially at high speeds. In our story, one of the trains clearly ended up on the wrong track due to a mistake made by the control room operator. It wasn't as some rumors suggest because the train driver was attacked or had turned into a zombie. The force of the collision ripples back through the train cars, causing them to pile up on each other or twist sideways. The screech of twisting metal fills the air as the front cars crumple like paper under the immense pressure, shattering windows and sending debris flying in every direction. And fuel tanks rupture, spilling their contents and sparking small fires. Smoke begins to rise, filling the air with a choking haze, while sparks from torn electrical lines crackle ominously. It's almost certain that under circumstances like this, there must have been explosions and fires. It's clear that the trains would have been burned to a crisp, with the ground scorched black from the heat and covered in charred rocks and dirt thrown up by the impact. But I'm not planning to go that direction. First of all, I currently don't have any assets to create a convincingly charred ground effect. Secondly, I have a much better idea that is turning this area into a flooded zone. The explosion might have damaged the underground pipes. Flooding seems like a logical result. At the same time, I could play around with the color of the water a bit to enhance the mood. But before any of that, let's get all these trees in place first. Let's make it a little bit lower. Later we will put a water source here. I know water can be tricky to control. It often doesn't behave exactly as planned. For example, let's place our first water source here and see how it flows. We might need a second one. Let's see. The color is not quite right here. We need to shift this bright island blue to something darker and more ominous. Maybe a little bit dark red like blood. Looks not bad, and I mean, from this angle it's actually great. This red is perfect. It's got that creepy horror movie vibe, and yeah, let's make more of it. Maybe it's a little bit too much, I don't know. It's like a bleeding wound, and you can never really tell how much blood will come out. We need to give the water more time to settle and stabilize. Meanwhile, let's work on adding some vegetation around the water's edge. Remember that nuclear power plant episode? Back then it was red trees and green water. Now it's green trees and red water. You know, it's funny how red and green always seem to balance each other out. Oh crap. This water is definitely way too much. The highway is already flooded. Damn, even the old survivor camp is underwater now. Half the trailer homes are already gone, completely washed away, and the other half will be destroyed soon too. But let's placing 2 floating cars to see how it looks. I mean, what's done is done. Everything I built in that whole episode is basically ruined. Oh my god. Yep. What can I say, bro? I could load the save game and reposition the water source, but then I'd have to place all the trees again. I'd say let's just move on. It is a lesson, and next time when working with water, let's get the water sorted out first before placing anything else. And most importantly, leave a like and consider subscribing. If you want to support me even further, join my membership. Now that the water level has dropped quite a bit, it almost feels like there's no water left here. So let's try adjusting the transparency and see how it looks. Holy, it looks even more like blood now. I mean, look at this. It's blood. This camp, it's like it was completely bathed in blood. It's kind of cool, but you know, it's a little bit too much. Not quite transparent enough, so we definitely need to tweak it a bit more. Option and absorption distance set to 1.5 meters. It should be better. It's definitely much better now, and yep, this area is looking pretty good too. The water depth is just right and the color works well too. Now we can start adding more vegetation. This combination of shallow water with some weeds is looking really good. Like I predicted, managing the water level is pretty challenging. This area that was underwater before is now dry, so we'll need to add some vegetation here to create a smoother transition. Now let's make the final touch on the train crash, tip over these freight cars and add some scattered rubble. Let's place 2 pine trees here, then turn them into dead pines, and then lay them down to make it look like they were hit by the train. Move it in this direction, right on top of this car. Yep, perfect. I think this area is pretty much done, and it looks pretty good. Let's move on to the warehouse area and try to create a scene of a destroyed container yard. So, we've learned a hard lesson before. If we're going to use the water, it's better to set up the source first. Place one here and adjust the height properly. Then wait a little bit to let the water spread out. Maybe one is already enough. Let me delete this one. Raise this one a bit more. Then we smooth out the terrain here and place a road down the middle. Seems one water source is not enough. Let's add another one on this side. Lower the road here, and yep, that seems right. Time for another water source here, and maybe one more over here. Let's lower this main road. It should be flooded as well. Connect these 2 parts and copy-paste some trees. Then we use tree control mod to transfer these trees to a forest, and the whole process is so satisfying. let's place some small trucks here. We're about to create our first flooded logistics company. Change their colors, make them look more aged and worn. Adjust each one to look a bit off balance. And soaking in this blood like water feels just right. It's more than just the trucks, we definitely need floating pallets and some loose cargo. We're going to place these grouped containers. They should face this direction. Then arrange them over here and we'll switch their orientation like this way. After arranging the stacked containers, it's time to add the scattered ones. These have fallen apart for various reasons, and the lighter ones are now floating on the water. Alright, we've pretty much finished setting up the containers. There are 2 yards on either side of the main road and both are half drowned in water. Now, let's go ahead and lay down some concrete ground and later we'll figure out how to add a crane. The only thing I could find is this type of tower crane used for high-rise construction. Let's use it as a base and try to piece together a gantry crane like the ones you'd see at ports or logistics yards, and typically a gantry crane comes with a matching track system. Here I found this fence asset and we could sink it into the ground to make a track-like thing, then make it properly aligned, then copy them over to the other side. Then some detail adjustment, and since these details are underwater, so there's no need to overthink them. I found a few assets and combined them to create a connection between these 2 cranes. Like this one, you know, is one of those hanging platforms used for window cleaning on skyscrapers. And this beam is, you know, like those bundles of cargo, steel plates, or honestly, I'm not even sure what it is. I just made the colors uniform and now it looks pretty decent. And this is the rail accessory, you know, the thing that stops trains. I'm not sure what it's called. And this piece below, I have no idea what it is either. I just put them together to create the feel of a crane foot thing. There should probably be wheels to let the crane move along the track. Luckily it's underwater, so it looks decent enough. I'm honestly so confused right now. Over time, the water level in this area seemed to have stabilized. It wasn't anything too crazy, but over here, this whole section feels like it's gone completely out of control again. Just a moment ago, it was almost dry and now it's completely flooded again. Oh my god, I really don't get this. Even the highway here is underwater now. I mean, this water thing is seriously driving me crazy. It's not that the effect is bad or anything, it's just completely out of control. What about we just leave it like this for today? And since the water level is so high, we might as well take the chance to shoot some cinematics. Honestly, I'll probably bring the water level back down later, so these shots are kind of a one-time thing. Could be rare and almost impossible to replicate. And before wrapping up, I also want to address some of your comments and ideas. I've noticed a lot of you have been asking me to add military elements for a really long time, and I've seen some amazing suggestions. But right now, the game doesn't have enough assets to create a proper military scene. There are no offensive vehicles or anything like that, and I don't want to produce something that feels incomplete. Let's see if mods bring in better assets in the future. If they do, I promise I'll dive right into creating military zones or checkpoints. Until then, we'll keep exploring the civilian side only, and by the way, I've collected some incredible stories from you guys. While they didn't make it into this episode, I'm planning a dedicated story video for them. Stories about veterans and evidence of alien attacks on farms completely pulled me into this post-apocalyptic world. Once again, thank you so much for sticking with me through this journey. Whether it's the chaos of the water, the creative ideas you've shared, or the stories that bring this abandoned world to life, your support keeps everything moving forward. So until next time, take care, stay curious, and I'll see you soon.